Hi again guys, my name's Andrew Overfield and this is my next Game Music Connect review. This is for 2014, which was held at the Purcell room down at the South Bank Centre on the 24th of September this year. Thank you to the kindness of Greg O'Connor-Reid at Top Dollar PR. What he's done is he's given me the opportunity to use some of the music from which the panellists have composed over the years, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the music in the background so you can have a bit of a listen to it and a general feel of what each composer does. Alongside that, at the bottom, somewhere around this little bit here, will be the name of the composer, what the track is, where it's featured from, and a little bit of information about them. Also in the bottom in the comments, the kind of description-y bit under the video will also be each one of the panellists' links, descriptions and recent works, so you can have a look at them and check them out. First of all, I'm going to start off with the introduction to the day. As last year, we all went into the Purcell room and into the area just outside the South Bank Centre. We're all given a good goodie bag, which came with the programme. It came with a couple of magazines, a couple of freebies and this, that and the other. It was good, you know, we had free bottles of water and stuff like that. And then we all filed all into the auditorium as such in the Purcell room. Everyone was getting sat down, waiting, chilled out. You know, me and Sam Hughes already walked in with Doug, and we managed to get sat down at the front. There was a tiny little reserve card on the front, and John's like, yeah, sit down, you know, it's fine. I thought, oh yeah, celebrities and that. But I think it was just because everywhere was filling up too quickly. John introduced himself and he introduced the day, and he told us what the kind of, you know, housekeeping rules were and all that kind of stuff, and what we should have expected for the rest of the day, how everything was going to plan out. I do have the programme which he gave to us all, just indicating all the times and everything that was going to be happening for the rest of the day. Oh, he also mentioned that he had a bit of a thank you to a couple of guys like me and Sam, just for things like creating a little bit more of a presence for Game Music Connect online over the internet for the last year, which I really appreciate that, John. Thank you. It's something that, you know, I want to kind of push forward, and events like this should be, you know, should be publicised, and it should be made available to anyone in the game music industry, or just even the audio industry. So John gave a short introduction about the itinerary of the day, what was going to happen, and then he introduced to the stage Steve Schnur for Vision Talk. So the Vision Talk with Steve Schnur. He approached the stage, and much like last year with Professor Stephen Deutsch, he came and gave us the introductory kind of small seminar, as I kind of suppose. He's the worldwide music executive for EA Games, and as far as like the game audio business go, you don't really get much higher. He's at the top of his game, and he's got some useful information, so that's what we were all taking him. He started by discussing the wind chime of memory, and that being music, by playing Sexy Back on his iPhone, and a couple of other tunes that he decided to play into the microphone for the rest of us to hear. Started talking about how the importance of music changes the world and changes the future, and how the class of 2018, which are all the 14-year-olds, you know, all over the world at the moment, that will be graduating in 4 years' time, and how they will be affected by things like the media, things like music, things like gaming, and other forms of entertainment. Steve also started to talk about things like live musicians and live musicianships in video games, more specifically the video game industry, to be fair. He also explained that there's only about 46% of live musicians being played for video game soundtracks at the moment, which he seemed as though that was disappointing. And it is disappointing. We should use live musicians. More and more video game music is being produced in the DAW, in the home studio. Maybe not as low key as mine, but you know, there seems to be an absence of live musicianship in video games these days. And it seemed apparent that he wanted to stress that a company like EA, which he obviously was, you know, promoting the fact they want to use and promote and use more live musicians in their video game scores on a constant basis, and see the progression growing with that. The one big quote that I can take from Steve is that he just says, "Live musicians fucking matter." Apologies for my French there, but that's exactly what he said, and I agree with him completely. You know, I'm sure there's many of you guys out there that want to use live instruments, live musicians in all of your scores, and sometimes it can be a bit, you know, bit of a restraint when you've got budgets and times and things like that. But he was quite adamant that he wanted to promote more live musicians, so thank you for that, Steve. The next section of the day was called Meet the Composers, and this is where John got on stage and he acted as somewhat master of ceremonies for the majority of the event. And he got up on stage with him, a few composers, and it was essentially just meet the composers. So talk to them, ask them questions, and find out a little bit about their background, how they got into the industry, how they feel the future of the industry is at the moment, and what advice they can give to other people. So the list of names that were on the stage there at the moment was obviously David Housden, Garry Schyman, James Hannigan, Jason Graves, Jessica Curry, Olivier de Riviere, apologise for that so much, and Richard Jakes. So each video game composer was talking about exactly how they got into the industry and what advice they could give to other people. I'm not going to go too much into it because, you know, it'll take up forever, and an hour-long video isn't something that everybody wants to watch. I know that from last time. One interesting point that I took away from that, considering some of the guests were on last year, some of the panellists were on last year, was Jessica, and Jessica Curry. She said that she'd never played a video game until Dear Esther in 2012. And that was quite interesting because the majority of the people that got into the industry were from a gaming background or had an interest in games as a child or as a teenager. And it was quite interesting that she'd never played games before, and she kind of just accidentally fell into it, I suppose. There were a couple of jokes thrown around there, but you didn't go, so I can't tell you. But yeah, it was quite informative. Yeah, it was obviously, there was Jason talking about how he got into scoring for games and how that's developed over time with the Dead Space series and moving into Tomb Raider and future projects. Richard was there again. He was talking about how he got in as a classical composer and then as a staff job at Sega, and then how he developed over his career into, you know, making tracks for games such as 007 Bloodstone, the Little Big Planet series. So that was quite good as well. James Hannigan was also there, and he was talking about how he started off in television and then moved in to get a staff job at EA, which has propelled him, you know, into being able to go freelance. He's done, you know, he's just recently done Transformers. And he's done a few other bits and bats that we were able to listen to as well throughout the day. There were some of the music played on like a screen in between the actual panels coming on and off the stage, so that was quite good. Each of the composers were also talking about where they get their inspiration from. So Richard was talking about how he gains inspiration from visuals. Jason was talking about how he gains inspiration by being involved, so constant communication with the audio director, constant communication with the development team, just to soak in that imagination and those ideas. Garry was also very informative. He was talking about the developers having a much deeper relationship with the game than you do yourself, and what we've got to do as a composer is provide the narrative for that game. Now, some games have a strong narrative, some games have a weak narrative, and each of the composers on the stage were all in agreement that, you know, the narrative is something that's very important. And what we do as a composer, musician, sound designer, to change that and help the narrative flow, or whether we change it at all, is all dependent on your relationship with the developers and how they trust you with your ability to either influence or not influence the game. It was very interesting to listen to that. Next, we're going to go on to Score to Studio. This is where John was chairing again, and we had Daryl Alexander from Cool Music, James Hannigan, Jason Graves, and Steve Schnur up on stage again. The theme for this kind of entire panel tended to circulate mostly around connections within the industry, business contacts, and focusing circulating around the need for an agent. Now, Daryl acts as an agent, and Steve obviously as a music executive. Them two have a little bit of a common thread where one should contact the other. Jason was on stage to give his own examples and variations of times when he's had to need both of the two entities, and also James was there giving his opinion on the entire matter. The big focus on it was when it comes to making computer games, and especially I think more focusing on the AAA side of things, that having an agent is quite necessary, especially in places like Los Angeles, where it can be, you know, almost imperative that your music, whether it's submitted to something, is solicited, and by solicited means sent via an agent and not just an email. Oh, we listened to my stuff, blah 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 blah. And the reason behind that is obviously because if something ever gets used like that again, or if something similar is created, then you have sent that to someone and you can claim to say, oh, that was mine, that was mine. But if you send it through an agent, anyway, you know that kind of side of things. So the focus was on getting an agent and the importance of that representation in the industry. Steve even says that when people approach him and say, I'd like to work with you, here's some of my music, this, that and the other, he even says, get yourself an agent. Before you even start working with me, before you even start on this next project with the year, get yourself an agent, because then you're covering your back and you're looking after yourself. And an agent will, I mean, yeah, we can sit here and we've got contacts here, we've got contacts there, we've got people that we know, you know, all over. But an agent will know a lot more. They'll know a lot more about the industry. They'll know a lot more about the legalities of it. They'll know who is where and who does what. So, like I say, there were a big focus on getting an agent. Now, me, sat in my room at home, composing music, I don't think I'm in need of an agent just yet. And maybe a lot of people in the audience weren't in need of it. But it's good to think in the future. And it's good to think, well, if we've got the contact details for Steve, let's not send him us music via email, blah, 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 because it's going to be unsolicited. So maybe it's about building your own profile, building your own kind of presence in the industry, and then maybe contacting an agent or having an agent contact you in regard to kind of securing future work. Jason also reminded us all that the majority of all of his work is done via an agent, and that's where all his work is sourced from. And then he talks directly to the audio director who makes a lot of the big decisions. One thing that James said as well, which I thought was really interesting, was the idea surrounding NDAs, so that's non-disclosure agreements, where you've signed a contract and you're about to work on something, or you've signed an NDA to say you cannot talk about this project in any way, shape or form to anybody else. And the competitive side of things, I think it comes a lot from, and it stems a lot from, I think one of the things he was saying was that the computer building industry, as in, you know, like your Microsofts and your Sonys and people like that, they have NDAs so that competitors can't steal their products and this, that and the other, and information isn't leaked. And you see that a lot with places like Apple and, you know, the kind of the new smartphone manufacturers a lot. When we had to sign NDAs as a composer, I mean, I'm no stranger to having to sign an NDA, whether I've visited a studio before or I've spoken to someone about a certain project that I might be interested in. Even if I'm not picked for that project, I still have to sign an NDA to be able to talk on a much more kind of better level in case there was a pitch to submit for. That's one thing that Steve mentioned as well. Steve said that he's not really a fan of the whole pitching type thing. He says you either like the composer that you want to work with or you don't. Sometimes there is a pitch involved, but the majority of the time there is no pitch. And if there is, the general consensus is, well, they should still pay you for that pitch. But that's something to go on kind of into detail a lot later on. So yeah, it was about getting an agent. And when it was talking about NDAs, it was like, well, does that stifle the creativity? I know for one that if I'm kind of starting on a project, or if I'm looking, you know, showing an interest in a project, I know that it can be extremely difficult for me to talk to someone in the same industry that might work for another games company, simply because of NDA. So I can't call up my friend who works at X, Y, and Z and say, "Dude, I've got this this thing that I'm interested in. Or I've got this that I want to kind of pitch for, or blah blah blah, this, that, and the other. How are you going about things at the moment? You know, or the guy might actually work for the company I'm interested in, or whoever. I can't talk about him. I can't talk about it because it's when you can't talk about how the game's going with anybody else or bounce ideas off anybody else, and it's the same with movies as well. Does that stifle creativity? I think it can do. I think it can do a lot. If I'm sat here at home writing music, and I'm not able to talk to anyone about it to bounce ideas off, or you know, bring a sound designer or another composer friend along and say, hey, have a listen to this. Can I get some of your ideas? Can I get some of your thoughts and opinions? By the way, you've got to sign this piece of paper first, just to say that you'll never talk about it for the rest of your life, and after 10 years after the game's release, you still can't even talk about it. And it's yeah, I feel it can stifle creativity a little bit, but it really just depends on how much kind of flexibility you've got within the contracts that you've signed. But overall, yeah, Scorta Studio was talking about agents, your representation with the industry. There was a lot of business facts and key knowledge that was given out, and it was, like I say, it was really informative. So thank you to the panel for that. Sorry, halfway through the video I've had to turn my lights on because it's getting a little bit dark outside now. Anyway, one of the things that was important that Daryl started to talk about was something that I actually wrote an article about in my blog. I'll put the link down in the comments and stuff like that, called FaceTime, the Importance of Networking, and it was based around networking and how you should treat yourself and how you should treat others and how you should kind of make yourself known and be present. And one of the important things that Daryl stressed upon was go to things like GDC, the Game Developers Conference. You know, go to places like that, talk to people, talk to other game developers. I mean, something that I put in my blog is yeah, you've got to do that. I mean, okay, it's going to cost you money in travel and things like that and accommodation, and it's an expensive business, networking, but it's good. And it's not to say, oh my god, I'm going to go there, I'm going to meet someone, and that's it. I'm going to be sound for the rest of my life. No, you can't expect that. I mean, like I say, it goes into more detail in my blog. But one thing was getting out there, networking, meeting the right people, and networking with the right kind of, you know, the right kind of individual that you think you might not even get any form of work out of it, but it's just nice to know other people in your situation. I know the people that I've met at Game Music Connect. There might not be people that I'll sit down and write a track with, or I'll collaborate with, or anything like that. But it's nice to just chat to them on Facebook every now and again. Do you know, a friend of mine will send me a cue and say, "What do you think?" And I'll say, "Well, sounds great, man. What I would do is I would do this, that, and the other. By the way, I'm doing something at the moment. Can you have a listen to it?" Blah, 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 blah. And just carry on from there. That's not to say that every single person that you meet, you have to get their advice on and you have to bombard them with a list of emails and tracks from Dropbox saying, please listen to it. But it's about managing your time efficiently and managing your presence within the industry. And getting out there and getting to these places. I mean, I've only been to a few this year, Game Music Connect. I went to Sensoria Pro over in Sheffield. I went to the Play Expo. It's just getting out there, and you meet the same people over and over again, and the more and more you meet them, the more and more you build up a trust and a development with them. And they might not want you, they might not need you for anything like that, but they might have a guy who says, do you know something, I met a guy and I've been talking to for the last couple of years who plays guitar. Boom, and then I'll get a call saying I need some guitar work doing, or I just need, I need this, that and the other. And it's just good to make your presence known, and it shows that you've got a willingness to put things forward rather than just sitting at home in the studio and going, well, I'll just wait for the phone to ring, But yeah, so overall, Score Studio, it was about a lot of the business aspect of things. There was some talk on NDAs, stifling creativity, and there was also the importance of an agent when you get kind of a little bit more presence for your craft. Okay. Next topic of the day was indie games, revolution or renaissance. And we had on the panel, once again, chaired by John, and we had David Housen, James Hannigan, Jessica Curry, Nick Ryan and Olivier de Riviere. And this was basically talking about indie games and the importance of indie games in the industry and how working with indie games can differ between working with them or AAA titles. I won't go into too much detail about it, but a lot of the emphasis was on how different things can be working within a small team where the development team could just be one guy sat in a bedroom, like what David was talking about, or it could be a team of 3 or 4 people that have been in development for a couple of years. And the differences between that and working with a large AAA company like EA, like Sony, like Microsoft, and how much of a communication barrier you can have, the difficulties that you can have where you may have 1 or maybe 2, 3 or different audio directors or executives kind of calling the shots on different products compared to letting an artist have complete creativity on their own within a 2 to 3 man team. One important thing that Nick was saying is that, can it stifle the creativity if a composer doesn't have a slight little bit of artistic direction? Jessica was talking about the importance of communicating your music through the entirety of a game's score and how important it is, and not to kind of lose that language. There was also a quite kind of broad subjects when people were talking about how hungry a developer is. Now, if you've got, John, Bob and George sat in the bedroom at home that have been working on this game for 3 years but are doing it for the love of it and for the passion of it, they are hungry for it because they want to succeed. If their careers, if they want their careers to be in video games, then that every single bit of detail they're putting into that game that you might be working for them with is near on perfect to what their output is kind of restricted to. When you're working with somebody like Microsoft on the next big Call of Duty, or someone like Ubisoft on the next big Assassin's Creed, do you get that same amount of hunger because of the business model of it? At the end of the day, 3 guys sat in the bedroom that have a budget of next to nothing, just maybe a part-time salary to live off. They're hungry for more. and they're not thinking about their losses, they're not thinking about their gains, they're just thinking about making a game that people enjoy, and hopefully it's successful enough for more people to enjoy it than they expected. The difference between that and, say, one of your AAA titles is there's the huge thing right at the very, very top. Obviously, it's about the gamers as well, but there's a huge thing at the top called a budget. And when there's things like huge budgets involved and huge time constraints and deadlines and things like that, maybe it's not as much relaxed. Maybe it's not as free or as creative. And not to say, I mean, I love some of the AAA games. I can't wait to play, you know, some of the huge games that are coming out, the new MGS game, the Phantom Pain. I mean, I love big games, but I also love indie games too. It's not to say that they're developed in any better way or any worse way than, you know, between indie games and AAA games or the big publisher games. It's just there is a difference. There is obviously a difference between a huge big office that 600 people are working in and a small tiny little bedroom that 3 guys are working in. But yeah, there's a definite difference between what they're hungry for success or hungry for profit. One point that Olivier did want to stress is the fact that there is still a large portion of creativity involved within AAA games, and when he's working on, you know, like games like the new Assassin's Creed, he's given full creativity, and he explained that a little bit in Game Music React a little bit later on in the day. But still, you know, it's you've seen things from both sides of the fence. David was also mentioning about his work with games such as Thomas Was Alone, and where he might be only working with a development team of 1 or 2 people, and he said it was a very intimate working environment that he quite enjoys, and that, you know, he maybe didn't have much of an interest in going into the larger scale sort of productions and developments just yet. So I suppose it swings and roundabouts, you know. There can be a hell of a lot of reward in writing for a small independent game where you might only be even offered a rev share, you know, as form of compensation, that is hugely accepted and, you know, and widely loved by millions of people. I mean, just look at successes like Super Meat Boy, look at successes like the Fez game, you know. But yeah, it's you could also have that with AAA titles. So yeah, I suppose it swings and roundabouts. But that was, you know, indie games, revolution or renaissance. Next panel for the day, after a short break we had, was Game Music React. Game Music React was basically all sorts of people talking about interactivity of video games, quite similar to the event that we had last year. Few differences here and there. There were a lot of new key information for previous attendees and a lot of great information for all the new attendees. So the panellists were James Hannigan, Jason Graves, Olivier de Riviere, Richard Jakes, Simon Ashby from Wise, Wise, and yeah, they were all talking about how things have changed with writing interactive music over the last 10, 15 years, things like that. Richard came up and gave us a quick example from an old game, which was the Jet Set Willy. And he basically was talking about how it's simply moving from game state A to game state B, depending on the progression of the game, the speed of the game, you know, how many lives you've got left, things like that. And this was talking about old Atari's Spectrum, things like that. James brought up a small program up on the screen called the Republic Music Fiddler, where it was basically all the audio stems created into one small tiny little program based in Windows of all the music that was in the game and how different things can be affected. So it was all sorts of, like, for example, when a new town's being built, you get this kind of sound. When your town's being attacked, you got this kind of sound, and you got a potential few different kind of sounds. And it was kind of all laid out with like drop boxes and things like that, so you could have this and this happening at the same time, and it would play this from a list of predetermined music that's already been recorded and stored somewhere else. That was quite interesting. Olivier started talking, and he gave a presentation on what he called interactive music, the quest for meaning. basically, he was talking about what he'd done with Assassin's Creed Freedom Cry and how he had a few slides. Really, really good presentation actually. He had a few slideshows on the big projector above us, and also there were a few videos as well showing how music develops in certain scenes, like in Assassin's Creed, where it's kind of a lot like Haitian, Haiti type music, and how it's developed as you're going through from game state 1, game state 2, game state 3, game state B, which is like walking around, games like this, then going into kind of a sneaking type, there's an enemy over there, okay, it intensifies slightly, then there's a battle theme, similar to how Jason presented his last year for the whole for the Tomb Raider reboot game that he did. But yeah, that was quite interesting to see Olivier have that approach, and he seems to have, and he was saying earlier on in the day that he's always had an interest for the development of games and from a development standpoint. So when it comes to interactivity of the music, he's extremely hands-on, and he obviously promoted things like using Wise and stuff like that. That's when Simon came on, and he started talking more about Wise and the benefits. I mean, it's a free tool. You can go and download it now for free to utilise and learn how to use. And he says it's extremely important to use that or any other number of kind of audio implementation tools that you have at your disposal when you're making a computer game. There was different ways of how people approach the interactivity of the music. So you can write a long track and start to break the stems down. Jason also said that sometimes less is more. So instead of repeating a phrase in a certain part of a game, remove a phrase or remove a stem to make it sound a little bit more emptier. Add a stem in, you know, a different instrument in when you want to sound it a little bit more thicker. It's all about intensifying it and where you can remove and add audio. And if it's writing a complete all full track and then removing instruments as certain parts of the level kind of progress, it could be something like that. But yeah, it was really, really, really good, and it was nice to see that there wasn't a lot of kind of repetitiveness from last year. Last year we had a certain few people, similar people as well, talking about a certain type of things. But this year there was a slight refresher on what there was last year, but there was new information, like with Simon there and Olivier there, and yeah, it was good and it was informative. So Game Music Year 2014. The BAFTA interview with Garry Schyman. He was basically on stage, chaired by John Broomhall again, and he was just talking to him about his kind of his life and his work and his music and things like that. Obviously, he's had a lot of successes recently with the BioShock games, and he was talking extensively about how he used to write for them, what times he'd get up on a morning, how much he'd write per day, what sort of interaction he'd have with the studio and the developers. Garry also mentioned that sometimes it seems harder to work for a computer game and write for a computer game than it does for film and TV because of all the different layers that you've got. He was told by the directors that when he started on, you know, BioShock, he didn't want the game to sound like a film. He didn't want it to sound like a film score. He wanted it to sound like a game score and provide a narrative to it. We got to see a few clips and listen to some of his music, which was really entertaining. And a lot of people, all the BioShock kind of fans in the audience were like, oh my god, you know, that, this and the other. And people were bombarding him with questions and wanted to ask him about this, wanted to ask him about, you know, that and the other. One of the things that he mentioned is, you know, when you're trying to get kind of work in the industry, was find out who you're working for and find out what they're like. If you've got an audio director that loves big, heavy percussions and things like that, and you send him some slow piano string notes with a little bit of wind on the side, you're not really gonna kind of pull on their musical heartstrings. When Garry was talking about his music for BioShock Infinite, he said that it seemed like it was scoring like there was a lot of visual cutscenes and things like that, where it was more linear scoring, and then they had the music layered for combat scenes and things like that. But it helped develop the narrative of it, especially like the intro to it. In fact, I'm obviously going to play a couple of snippets from Garry's work in the background, and I'll have all the information underneath for you. But it was really good to just see that one-on-one type thing, because when you see a panel up there is great, and because the panel can debate with each other on, well, yeah, you said that, but I don't kind of agree with that, and you said that, and I agree with that, and this, that, and the other. And it's really good to get like different perspectives and different, you know, kind of different opinions from everybody else on stage. But that one-on-one interview with John and Garry, people were able to ask a couple of questions that were more intimately aimed at, you know, what Garry was talking about. So well done on the award, Garry, and yeah, it was great to see you there. Thank you. So finally, to end the panels and the event for the day, there was the crosstalk Q&A, where basically everybody that was a panelist for the day, apart from Nick and Steve, got up on stage, and it was a case of throw your questions at them and hope you get a good answer back. There was, yeah, everyone was asking kind of relevant questions. Everyone was asking information about getting into the industry, and each composer had, or panelist on the stage, had great opportunity to voice their opinions to the rest of the Game Music Connect crowd. There was a little microphone that went around everywhere that people were asking questions, this, that and the other. Like I did last year, I asked a question this year, and yeah, it was good. Got a little bit of a chuckle out of everyone, because it was good to see so many more female game composers and enthusiasts there, and it was like, oh yeah, you like them, but yeah, okay, regardless of that. Yeah, it was really good fun. We got to fire a lot of questions out, and yeah, I hope people got all the answers that they wanted. And if they didn't, then afterwards we all went into the bar, which was just like a reception area just outside the Purcell room, and yeah, everyone just chatted. They were all mingling, everyone between the different groups. There was some representatives from each of the sponsors there. All the composers were out there, and obviously they had their opportunities for the photo shoots and things like that in the room while we were all chatting. But it was good to just have a beer and chat with everyone and do that. When that had all finished, we decided, okay, we'll do what we did last year, and we ended up back at the Azuro bar, just like underneath this the kind of railway, this kind of like arches way. And it was great. We spent a good few hours there, and it was good to meet a lot of you guys that had attended and just chat, eat some pizza and just talk music, talk general, anything really. It was good to see a lot of old faces there. So I saw Ilmari again, and yeah, it was good seeing him, and it was good meeting new people like David, Anya, Rosa. There's loads of people. Alex that I saw again from last year. Obviously Doug and Sam were down there as well. Who else? God, there was loads of people. Sorry if I forgot your name. But yeah, it was just great just to have a chat with everyone, and people handing out business cards and doing a bit of networking and things like that, and it was good to kind of remove that on stage, off stage kind of isolation, and just everyone kind of bonding together all within the same room, and then we fizzled off for the end of the night, and that was the end of yet another great Game Music Connect 2014. My own thoughts for Game Music Connect 14. Once again, wow. I mean, it's good having such a great event to be able to be a part of it, and to be an attendee, and to be able to chat with everyone and gain useful information. As I've said previously before, and as I said to people down there on the day, and as I've said in blogs and things like that, being a composer, and it doesn't matter whether it's in video games, it doesn't matter whether it's in TV, film, whether you're writing cues to license or library music, it really doesn't matter. Being a composer is a very isolated job, or a sound designer can be extremely isolated, especially if you are in kind of a freelance or non-kind of permanent role like a lot of us down there were. It was really, really, really good to kind of get out and get some fresh air, get some sunshine, get some beer, and just chat with other people that are in the exact same situation as you. I know I'm kind of repeating myself from the video that I did last year, but I managed to catch up with John at Sensoria Pro and had a really, really, really good long chat about it, things like that. And one of the things I was saying to him, in regard to why I kind of want to promote this event so much, is exactly because of that. Because of getting out there and just chatting to people, and not being stuck in these same four walls, having the same resonance going on your head all the time, and not being able to have like a physical face-to-face conversation with someone. It's all well and good getting on Skype and talking on the phone or on Facebook and things like that, but it's very faceless, and it can be very kind of how do I say it, can be very one-dimensional. You can't tell the tone of somebody's voice through a text message. You can't have the sense of urgency or the sense of importance with an email. But face to face, when you're sharing a drink with somebody or whatever it is, you get that personal connection. And even if the Game Music Connect didn't exist, even if it didn't exist, I think something like this needs to exist, you know. And it's great that John and James provide us with a platform to gain some insightful information on the business, gain some insightful information on the inner workings of what these guys are, professional composers, what their daily routines are like, as well as just meeting up with everybody. So yeah, we've had a good catch up with that, and what I'm also going to do is throughout the ending of this video, and I think what I'm going to do is in my blog, which is andrewoverfieldmusic.wordpress.com, I think. I don't know, I only started it like a month ago, so I'm still quite new to using WordPress, but I think that seems to be quite a decent platform to use for blogging. But I'll do a small write-up on there as well, which is going to include just a few comments from a lot of the other kind of attendees that were there, just their thoughts on it, what they do in the industry, and how they feel that the event is good. I've been passing, you know, information on to the creators of the event to get their, you know, to give them the feedback and get their feedback on what to include for next year. Once again, I did mention to John that maybe we could have somebody that from more of an Eastern background for music composing. I mean, there is such a huge gaming industry over in, you know, places like Japan and in the East that is we haven't even tapped into yet. So that'd be really good to see something like that. But yeah, I think as the year goes on between now and hopefully Game Music Connect 15, we'll be able to get a lot more feedback from other people and see, you know, what exciting things are to come in Game Music Connect 2015. I've still got a couple more articles to write for the Sensoria Pro that I attended and Play Expo. I'd also like to thank Dark Clear Productions as well for giving me the opportunity to go to Play Expo. That was quite cool. So yeah, I'd like to thank them for that, and Sam Hughes especially for being like a rock and a confident and what have you. Every time I get stuck on something, or if I feel as though I'm banging my head against a brick wall, that's it. One phone call to Sam, and yeah, so he's running the Sound Architect at the moment, and he's doing really well for himself. So you should go check him out. Big thanks to Doug and Alex for being down there, and, you know, having a party with us, and it's good to see kind of old faces again. Thank you to all the sponsors, thank you to all the panelists that came down. If you are unsure about Game Music Connect, and, you know, hopefully this video has given you a bit more of an insight into what the event is, and the rest of the articles, which I'm going to link down below, will give you a little bit more information about it as well. But if you're unsure, and this video has helped in any way, then you'd like, comment, subscribe, do that whole internet ass kiss thing that we like to do. And send me a message if you've got any pointers. You know, if you don't like the colour of my shirt, or you think that the light's too bright or too dark, or I'm too Yorkshire, then send us a message, because I love to chat to loads and loads of people about all sorts of stuff. It doesn't matter what it is. If you want to ask about anything, then go for it. It's really nice to network and communicate with you all. So yeah, that's the end of the video review for Game Music Connect 2014. Once again, like I say, big thanks to the sponsors, all the panelists, everyone who attended, and extra special thanks to John and James for another amazing year. We'll see you next year.